Okay, here we are back again. Q&A, September, Patreon, September 25th, 2023. Take a moment, whatever you're doing and wherever you are, to just notice your body. This doesn't have to be anything dramatic. You don't have to go too deep or too shallow. You may notice things like the sensation of your body landing on the furniture or into the space around you. You may notice things like the way your body moves without you even needing to think about it. Small adjustments to become more or less comfortable. And the way the breath moves through your body and with your body. Take a moment to notice your surroundings. If you have the ability to turn your head, peek around you, you can. If you're, say, driving or something, keep your eyes on the road. But what can you notice a little more in your peripheral vision? Widening the seeing a little. Take a second to acknowledge your listening. What are the sounds that maybe fade a little into the background normally, that with some attention you can hear more fully? And what are the sounds on the inside of your body? Can you notice the sound of your heartbeat? Do you even imagine that you could hear the sound of the electricity through your body as your nervous system works? And draw in through the senses like a funnel into this moment. And I'm going to share thoughts, the research, exploration, and curiosities around the question that I received this month. And the question is, why is it so hard to stay in the higher self? Why is it so hard? This is such an incredible question, and it really sent me down a lot of pondering and musing and research. And I knew as soon as I got the question that I wanted to use the path work as a resource point. So the first thing I want to do is give a framework for higher self and lower self using that language. And the higher self it's your core being. It's your connection to the life force. It's something we all have. It's the juice. It's the unnameable. It's the sparkle. It's more of a quality than an action. The quality is expansion. The quality is curiosity. The quality is an inherent sense or feeling of power, of serenity, of love. It's not a rising and falling towards these things, but it's a light that always burns. It's the spirit that is always alive. It's the untouchable thing beneath whatever we're working with. It's the same thing that pushes itself through a blade of grass. So the teaching is that the core self or the higher self is our natural state of being. It is the life force that imbibes us, that is within us. And the lower self, also worth defining here, we come into this world with this with this life force, with this connection to our higher self and our core self. Not even connection, we are it. And invariably, because of this human plane and this human world, something doesn't go so well. This could happen the moment you're born. It could happen anywhere along the way. As soon as we begin to push into a physical, material, tangible realm, we are immediately in suffering in a certain way in that Buddhist context, in a host of needs, wants, and desires that may or may not be met so well because they're just met by other humans. And we're also in a host of a place where we have this light, we have this love, we have this power and serenity, and we shine it out. And often that doesn't go so well. Our very vulnerability and the sharing of our very essence is met with sometimes direct manipulation, sometimes just denial, anywhere in between. And because we have no context, this isn't happening on a cognitive level, because we have no context for understanding the challenges of this world and the particular circumstances of our family and people who raised us, our society, it is a deep, deep, deep pain. So our lower self is right next to our higher self. It's kind of right on the edge of it. Because when our higher self and our expression of our inner essence and beauty is first met with any form of rejection or pain, we cauterize a wound around it, and the wound is in our psyche. Now, these wounds can break apart easily, but with repetition, they get stable. This is all happening on a very unconscious level, and it happens to all of us. And within that sort of cauterization of the pain is, well, the pain itself, the grief of this plane, the pain that our needs and our wants and our expressions of self can't always be met or shared or appreciated. And there's also the pain of this natural response of tightening and of saying no, of saying, no, fine, I won't expose myself in that way again, so I will shut down. Unconsciously, the energy of, if my love is expressed and rejected, I will just not love. If my needs are not met, I'll try not to have needs. So it's also this birth of where we kind of turn the energy back on ourselves. We shut ourselves down before we can be shut down by the world because it gives us more control. And also embedded in this lower self is this desire, which is very natural and human and instinctual, to retaliate, to punish, to willfully hurt those that have hurt us, and to make choices from fear. And this is all a lot. So imagine this is happening deep within the energetic movement and psyche of a very young being. It's too much. It's too much. So this part of ourselves gets isolated and pulled away. It gets shut away, it gets locked away. And there is really the birth of the lower self. Now, what did we use to make this lower self? We didn't use some foreign substance. We used our own energy. So we used the life force. So one thing about why is it so hard to stay centered in the higher self is a reframe. And I'll get back to this a little more later, but it's a reframe to everything actually is within the higher self. The lower self is within the higher self. The lower self is actually the access point. Our energized intensity is closer to this higher self than, say, the mask that we drape over all of us when we try to stifle our life force. So when I first got this question, again, I've been thinking about this one a lot. I had originally really thought about this pathwork lecture where it talks about how it's very challenging to stay in the higher self. It's actually difficult. It actually takes discipline and training. And I thought I would talk about that. And I will talk about it a little bit, but it is work in a way to break our habits and our patterns. So the way our whole neural network works is for efficiency, is to not have to relearn things all the time. So these deep, deep patterns that I just talked about, they lay a certain riverbed, and our energy moves along that riverbed through the whole course of our life. And usually it works well enough. Usually it goes okay. And that for habit and survival, it's easier, more efficient, I should even say, to just let the energy run along those pathways of thought and of belief, those pathways of it's going okay. So there's a familiarity to not quite centering in the higher self. Also wanted to talk a little bit about how there's a certain courage societally. And I think that part of the habit and the comfort of staying away from really being within the quality and the energy of the higher self is, well, it can seem very dangerous. Most of us have had an experience of showing, this is what I was just talking about, really of showing what's best and brightest in us. And again, it not going so well, it being rejected or manipulated. So there's a part of us that's like, yeah, why would I put myself through that again? That's dangerous. And this shows up a lot. This shows up not just in what we do with ourselves later, but societally, we do this to each other. It shows up in the courage. It takes courage to be in, again, the quality doesn't even have to be the words, the quality, the energetic quality of the curiosity, of the being deeply empowered, and of being in the fabric of love. It takes a lot of courage to show up like that in the pain of our world, in the pain of our circumstances. And even for that to be seen. And this happens all the time. People are always questioning, how can you possibly XYZ when XYZ is happening? We are very committed to staying at a certain level energetically. And the truth of it is to stay in this higher self energetically, or nobody's in it all the time. Let's be real. We're humans. But to begin to center in this quality of higher self means that we need to look around us, see the world for what it is, not be in denial. That's the mask. Pretending that shit's not going on, that's the mask. But to see the world for what it is and still remain curious, still be willing to be vulnerable and expose ourselves. That takes a lot of courage. And I think that's what that lecture is really talking about when it says that it takes practice and, in a way, discipline to stay in that place, because it's a courageous act to show up like that. It's not as courageous to sit back and kind of let the criticizing take over. You can look at any of the trolls on the internet and see this is this common denominator. And not only that, to see that people enjoy it, that there's a certain pleasure people get in tearing down what is threatening to them. What is threatening to them is the higher self. Checking my notes here. So it's a risky endeavor. It can be really risky to show up, to do your best, to show up as best as you can for the world, and even more than that, for yourself. That's the real risky endeavor, because to look at the world and do your best to show up in the vibrational quality of the core self, even amongst all the crap, is the same as to show up for yourself, even amongst the fact that we have pain, that we have defenses, that we have grief, we have fear, we have sorrow. We sometimes want to annihilate other people. We have parts of ourselves that are willful and punishing to ourselves or others. Thought. We withhold. And to show up for those parts without over-identifying with them or over-indulging them is really challenging, risky, and courageous work. The access point of our core self is going through the lower self. The access point to reach that recentering is going through all of that discomfort. Very, very deep. So I'm going to read a couple quotes now. So this is Pathwork Lecture 226. You confuse self-acceptance and self-forgiveness with condoning and whitewashing the negatives of the lower self. Equally, confuse the self-devastating guilt and self-hate with honest admission of what is indeed wrong and needs to be changed. I think this is really huge. If we feel so ashamed of any part of us, anything that's within us, we have already moved into duality. We've already moved into there's a me and then there's a separate part. There's a good me and there's a bad me. As if there's even two different kinds of energies in the world. Remember, the lower self is within, held within the highest self. So this is just the dualistic patterning, which is absolutely a huge part of our world. And we're slowly, slowly learning to retrain that. Loving, patience, and forgiveness. Here's another quote. Make room for the presence of your divinity, which makes it possible for you to face whatever exists within you. Somebody asked me once what freedom is. And one of the things that I came up with, really came to me is, the inner freedom, perhaps. Inner freedom is seeing and knowing yourself with a deep self-honesty and self-truth and still loving yourself. It's no longer running from any part of yourself, no longer running from what's inside. Courage, right? This takes courage. Everything you are now, even in its imperfection, is the ever-existing internal life and can never not be. There is no greater truth, no universal fact of creation, no macrocosmic event that cannot also be immediately applied to your personal development, your growth, and your self-forgiveness. I imagine this sometimes like a teacher. And I imagine this teacher having maybe like some kindergartners, a whole bunch of kindergartners. And there's the one kid in the corner that won't stop, hitting their classmates or throwing crayons. What does that teacher do? How do you be with that one? How do you be with that one without indulging that one or ignoring that one? How do you let it know that it's part of the whole, that it's in the classroom, that it's participating, that the fear and the pain that it feels is okay. And it's also not okay to hit and throw crayons. How do we, that's the nuance, that's the unique specificity of working with the lower self that is really unique to each one of us. The part where I talk about quotes a lot. So this is a big one. The very fact of facing the lower self deserves mercy and forgiveness and love. This is what human beings have been praying for, addressing for a millennium to a God outside of themselves, thinking that dispensations given from the outside will make up for what they withhold from themselves. What if it's all higher self? What if our practice is in finding that droplet of divinity, that spirit, that bit of the life force that is absolutely within our whole being, within our manifestation, so that we're not so identified with the way the life force manifests, whether that's the physical reality or the way that we've needed for survival to build defenses and all the gnarling that can happen within those defenses. But what if we remember that within those defenses is also our life force? Within our pain is also our life force. So there is no longer this duality, no longer I'm either in this or I'm in this, but the highest self. And a portion of the higher self is the compassionate, objective observer. If that part of us, that compassionate, objective observer, and that higher self is sitting and watching, it's like the moment we see that child throwing crayons in the corner, we're no longer identified with the child. The moment that we can notice our pain and our will and the ways that we want to say no, the ways we want to say no to life and no to ourselves and no to loving and no to power and no to our knowledge, the moment we can identify that and sense it and track it, we are no longer looking from that lens. We are with that lens. It's like the parable, and I do think of this as a parable of like Lucifer, of this idea that there is an angel that falls. But, and forgive me, I'm not going to go into deep details here because I don't know them. I think about this much more archetypally. That angel that falls is still an angel. It's still under this jurisdiction of this higher being. It can't not be. It's not outside of it. There's nothing outside of the life force. There is actually nothing outside of having a spark of divinity within it. And when we feel and connect more, when we try with the life force than with the manifestations, we begin to sense that. We begin to be buoyed up by that and know that sometimes it's going to gnarl and sometimes it's going to twist and sometimes it's going to hurt. But that's also a part of it. We're also flowing and moving through that. Let me see if I missed a quote that I wanted to say. Again, I'm going to say this one again. Make room for the presence of your divinity, which makes it possible for you to face whatever exists within you. Everything you are now even in its imperfection, is the ever existing eternal life and can never not be. Your nose, your resistance, your delight, your curiosity, all of it. It's all part of it and never cannot be. So why is it so hard to stay centered in the highest self? I think there's really two answers that I've come up with or I'm curious with here. And they speak to different levels. So on one level, it's hard because, it's fucking hard. It's hard because it's hard. It's hard because it takes a lot of courage to reroute patterns, which are, while maybe not making us feel like vibrantly alive, they're doing okay. It's incredibly challenging to reroute these things, and it's hard work, and it takes space, and it takes support, and it hurts. It hurts. It hurts to face the sharp pain, and it hurts to face the soft pain. So that's answer one, I suppose. And answer two moves beyond that answer, which even inherently had duality in it, which is that you've actually never left. You've actually never left the higher self. It just goes on these different journeys, and we follow them because we are a tiny portion of something much larger. You've never left. So I want to invite you now to take a few breaths. And we're going to do about a 10-minute visualization meditation practice. And I think this one will be done with your eyes closed, would be useful. But maybe before we get there, you need to shake it out for a minute, jump up and down, take a wiggle. It's a lot of information. I can feel it coursing through me right now. That's why I'm kind of saying that too. And I'm like, oh, I need to send that to the ground. So send it to the ground, and so we're going to send it into the body. We're going to let our brain relax and release all that information. I'm going to send gratitude for those words coming through me, for the teachers I've had and continue to have. And after you've wiggled around or done what you need to do, where you feel like you can close your eyes somewhere, rest relatively comfortably, just go ahead and find your spot. Focus on your breath again, and I want you to visualize the breath like a gentle wave. Filling your chest and then your pelvis as you breathe in, leaving your pelvis and then your chest as you breathe out. The natural movement of the spine is when we inhale, a slight extension happens. That means a slight arch happens in your spine, which I'm exaggerating right now. And when you exhale, a slight curl happens, which I'm exaggerating right now. So now as you're breathing, filling the chest and then the pelvis, Feel a slight arch. As you breathe out, you're pushing the air from the pelvis and then the chest. Feel a little curl. Do that about 5 or 6 times. Once your breathing pattern is relatively established, you're feeling the slight movement in your body, to bring in the image of a river. And this gentle, beautiful river is going to enter through the crown of your head. You can watch it move down around your brain and your skull, around the bones of your neck. Let it splash around to your chest. For some reason, water as an image doesn't work for you here, then you can picture light, like a gold light. And this river is the river of yes. Its quality is tingly and curious, maybe a little tenacious, playful. It loves, it's powerful, it knows peace. Continue to let this river of yes, this gold light, move down your body, splashes around your arms, through your chest, belly, your organs. Around your pelvis, down one leg all the way to your heel and every single toe. Down the other leg, your heel and every single toe. And visualize for a moment your body is pulsing with this river, with this golden light, the life force, this river of yes. This river that is the honesty of your needs and your wants, your beingness, your truth, your power, your love, and your serenity. Watch it move around you, circle, pulse into maybe the space around a foot around your body, into the egg shape around you. Pulse in towards your heart and your navel, anywhere. And continue to visualize these kind of pulsing lines of light, this pulsing flow of water. And ask now to feel what in your body has separated, what has split off. This could be a place you feel tension or pain and emotion, a hidden spot where you want to hurt those that have hurt you. It might just show up physically, it might be somewhere that's itchy right now. And now let this river of yes splash around that area. Bathe it. You don't need to make a difference. Just bathe it in this gold or in this water. Ask for support. Ask to be reminded in a felt and somatic sense that you are part of everything. That you could never not be a part of the life force. And anywhere within you, that's something that feels like it's split off or held away. Don't make it different. Just let it float for a moment in this other sensation, this feeling. Feel this river of yes move along your spine, through your organs, around you, within you. And if you feel like you can, draw to mind now either something in your life that's challenging you or some version of yourself. Draw it to your mind and then draw it into your heart. And see if you can even bathe this version of yourself in this river of yes. Feel the gold, watery pulsing around it. Let it be held. The higher self, because it's connected to divinity, doesn't end. It's infinite. But the lower self always reaches a point where there's an ending. It always reaches a point where it's so contracted, it can't do anything but open back up again. It has a stopping point. And at that stopping point, you're there to help it open, to lay it to rest, to help it transform, to breathe the life force into it and out of it. The reason that we never can fully let go of our lower selves until we have recognized that it holds some of our own energy is because it holds our own energy. It would be like cutting off a limb. So it doesn't work to run. You say, this is the limb, and somewhere within it is also my life force. Letting yourself rest now. Releasing the imagery and the visualization. Just taking a moment to be with yourself in whatever state you're in. This too is what you're seeking. Returning to the wave breath of your body, inhaling through the chest and the pelvis. Exhaling out the pelvis and chest. And I'm going to sign off here with two invitations, depending on how you're feeling and what you'd like to do. So perhaps you're in a place where you've got the time to just take a little nap, rest a little. Great, do it. And perhaps you either feel a little ungrounded and you need to kind of recenter yourself, or you've got to, get back to work, go eat some lunch, do something. When you're ready to sort of quote unquote come back, just do a little tapping. Open and close your palms a few times, squint your face, shut and open, squint your toes, rock your body, do a little humming, and just let yourself once again look around. I'm inviting you to close the portal when you're ready. Know that you can get back to it when you've got the time. Remember, it's all part of it, and you're doing great. I'm going to send out deep, deep appreciation. So happy to be in this work with you, with all of you. And that's it for today. Bye.